Tetro as chair, and I met with the applicant upon their request with an informal meeting to discuss the status of the project. After which, the applicant submitted a revised submission on Friday, which was December 9th. And in the interim, Fussin O'Neill has been, we've been waiting for a task bus authorization from Fussin O'Neill to let you know how much supplemental review fee is still required for these final reviews. And off, kind of off the record, it's estimated right now. I don't have the official, but she said around $1,600. That's something like that for some minor changes. So I should be getting that in here tomorrow or the next day. And we'll get that, we'll let you know right away so you can get that one.
Okay.
So that submission number 6 was received and distributed to town department, planning board. It has not yet been provided to Fussin O'Neill what transpires this evening. But we will do it immediately based on what. Since we just got it on Friday, it stays. I revised the draft decision and updated it with several of the comments that we received at the last planning board meeting. And that was provided to the applicant team and also the planning board members. If the public is interested, there's a few copies that we made on the back table there. So that was done relatively recently. And that brings us to tonight. Public hearing. Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. Again, I'm Brian Sharp, counsel for the applicant, FD 250 Turnpike LLC.
Okay. If you want to go through the new plans or.
Mr. Tetro could speak to them. I'll say just generally, we, with his changes, responded to feedback we had received from you all at our meeting on Monday, November 21st. And then, as Karina said, she had gone through them last Monday with Mr. Tetro, which resulted in Friday's submission, December 9th. But I think, hopefully, as a result of our meeting with the chair and the planner, there are no open plan items. And this really should be what you're looking at dated December 9th should be. Very high level. You want to touch on changes?
Sure.
I will say they were covered in his cover letter, which he had submitted on Friday through staff.
To the chair, James Tatro has the plan design, also representing FD 250 Turnpike LLC. And the last submission, which was made on Friday, was just to address some loose ends of minor inconsistencies among the plans. The landscaping plan showed all this area here to post outdoor storage, fulfill the lining, the striping. We had them take that off. And also did not reflect the correct boundaries of the fence, which is 6-foot high fence, which already has the red line here on each side of the entrance here, the gate, and then over towards the Firebird property line on the west side and south side, then on the east side of the existing pavement, and then just 3 feet off the property line between lot A and lot B to block any use of the portion of pavement that's on lot B. And that resulted in one parking space effectively being taken out. But we had provided 37 versus required 36 before, so now it just defaults down to 36 versus 36 required. There's also an issue. We had a couple of handicap accessible spaces over here, but in the striped median strip between them, there's actually an existing light. And so, again, we were in excess of the necessary number of handicap accessible parking spaces. We just made those 2 spaces regular spaces, so there's no question about whether the median between them is adequate so that they qualify as HC. We still have 2 van accessible and 2 regular handicap accessible parking spaces for a total of 4 versus 37 provided, which is well in excess. Up to 50, you need 2 under the agricultural access board. So we have that. There's another, just a small omission. We have added the all the existing trees along the frontage between the two access driveway and above the spaces on the west side of things. They have just one free, added that one. So it's just really just making all getting rid of any inconsistencies in our plans, primarily getting the landscaping and lighting plans to reflect the correct fencing and correct paving as far as that the striping all this area being eliminated because those well really was a state found in the future if there's a boat or a pod unit or something there. So we believe now we've addressed all the minor inconsistencies that have been there on the plans amongst the various plans in the set. And as Mr. Chairman said, we think this will be plan that can be used as reference in the decision.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mill?
Thank you, appreciate it. So. The fence. Can you remind me what the height is supposed to be based on the distance? Yes,
So, during the last two revision sets, maybe sooner than that. Originally, the applicant had proposed a 10-foot high screening fence around the perimeter of the storage facility parking area of the lower lot. It was found that the 10-foot fence in Southwest bylaw under section 174-2 definition, that a structure is, if the fence is more than 6 feet, it's considered a structure. And therefore would have to meet setback requirements. So the setback, the rear yard setback for a 10 or fence higher than 6 feet, is 50 feet from the rear setback. And the side setback as well. So based on where the lot line was created in the A&R that was endorsed back in May of this year, that wouldn't work. It would be not compliant with zoning code. So the applicant has come back and is showing a 6-foot fence on the property for within the property boundary at this time. And I believe they removed the fence line that was between the upper and lower sections of the project.
Right.
Yeah.
Correct. Jordan is right. We pointed out we had shown a fence over here off the west side of the space, but it really was not serving much of a purpose. We simply eliminated, it wasn't going to restrict access to anyone, and there's no sensitive receptor or button over here to the side and want the fence to clean things out. So we simply took off the fence between this point and down to the river.
Yeah, and another point there is that, if, you know, there were instances where that fence location may be within the 20-foot northward buffer zone of existing wetland. And when conservation reviewed this plan, they were reviewing it with under an abbreviated notice of resource area delineation. And they were solely looking at the detention basins, whether they were to be considered wetlands. In the final analysis from conservation, if they are considered wetlands, but conservation did not opine on any fence that would be added as an improvement, which would then also fall within the no disturb zone. So I don't know if conservation would find that a problem or not. I've spoken to Melissa about it, and I don't think it would be a big deal for them, but I'm just third-hand information. But I suggested they check with conservation if they were going to leave the fence there, if it was going to be an issue or not, but instead they opted to take the fence out of that section. So a 10-foot fence is originally proposed was not code compliant where they're located in based on the property line, they couldn't put a 10-foot fence there because they can't meet the setback. So you have options, so.
So
We just wanted the fence to be a by right structure in that location,
Yeah,
slightly inside from the property lines.
that's right. So I believe you put it like 3 feet inside property line. And James was saying, which impacted that last parking space. Bottom left corner. And they do have, proposed 36, they're required to have 36, so they need to. Leaving that space.
and the height of the fence for storage area is fine, 6 foot versus 10.
I don't know if it's fine or not, it's fine as far as zoning. is concerned. So 6 feet is sufficient, it meets the code. That it would be, and I believe they spoke with the building commission as well. Also, well, it meets the code. It meets the code, so it's not a structure, and where it's located appears to be appropriate.
And I would just quickly add, we had to make some minor changes, the lighting engineer did. To wattage of a couple of fixtures, because previously the 10-foot high fence off the boundary of Firebird was helping to stop light from spilling over onto that property. So as part of making this fence 6 feet high, he actually changed wattage of a couple of fixtures. So that it wasn't gonna hit the lower fence that it would spill light.
Which also culminated in you having to move that light post in the top right corner
We-
about 5 feet to the west. So next to the Firebird property, there's a light post right there that they were going to keep. Where it is, it just changed the picture or the height or something. So now they had to move it inward into the property. Right,
And I'm correct, and I would just note also, pursuant to what Brenda was saying with regard to wetlands. Well, we very consciously stopped this piece of fence here, 20 feet away from the wetlands, so that it didn't get into that disturbed zone. So that, again, to avoid even that question having to be resolved.
Okay.
Mr. Charles, quick question. Are you gonna update the status of the, Mr. Cipriano's responses? Like, around the lawyer questions that we had? Town council?
hotel.
Yeah, sorry. All right.
Yeah. If you're ready, whenever you're ready, I can provide you with legal opinion, a recap of the legal opinion requests and responses.
Yeah, I mean, I'm at this point fine with that. I think it's the condition updates and then just hearing where we stand with, town council.
So you want to read? Okay. So, earlier in December, late November, I had posed a question. I had sent in a legal opinion request with 5 questions regarding, misrepresent, regarding the proposed self-storage facility and the newly created lots, and the row of parking spaces that are located beyond the southern property line as it is now, encroaching onto the residential A zone. And town council indicated that the creation of the new lot line raises problems with the orphan parking on the new lot. It does not appear that such parking would be allowed in the residential A zone, nor, as we discussed, with the 30-foot rule apply to this lot. So in essence, when the property is one big lot, town code does allow, based on when the zoning line was put in place and cost dissect of the lot, does allow for up to 30 feet into the more restricted residential zone. That was when you had one lot. When the A&R was created in the lot line, then Trump, isolated that southern restricted parking. That parking now that was associated with the office building became an illegal use in the residential A zone. So that was the first question. And then we asked about, the special permit runs with the use of the property and the variance runs with the land. And it depends, 5 conditions of approval in the special permit appear to remain applicable and can only be altered by a special permit, meaning an amendment to a special permit. So there was a 1990 special permit for the light manufacturing use system. Hopefully that was permitted at the time. And there were 5 conditions in that special permit from the ZBA, three of which, 1, 2, and 3 restricted use on the lot. In other words, no access to Packerville Road, no building on the residential A lot. They say lot, but, and then there was, one other restriction, just can't remember what it is. And then the 2 last conditions were, solely based on the manufacturing, so they weren't. So in the big picture, town council will find that those conditions still hold, and that it would, that the applicant would, in his opinion, would need to go back to ZBA to amend that special permit to not require those conditions for their special. So, and the distinguishment is that, there are site-specific conditions and there are use-specific conditions. And the 3 that I was talking about, the access and the, whether you can build on the residential, those are site-specific. And the other 2 that related to the manufacturing use, like you can't add more manufacturing, those were use-specific, as we explained. Let's see here. It was determined that there was that typo on the 1990 ZBA decision where it had called it a variance as the header table, but the vote was a special permit. And upon looking at the original application, we would find that it was a special permit. The variance was just a typo. Let's see here. The 5th question, the 4th question was the same as the 2nd question about the special permit, run with the land and how the conditions were. The 5th question was regarding endorsement of the A&R plan in May of 2022, and did the planning board negate any conditions of the 1990 ZBA special permit that was in place? And he said, no, the A&R was approved under the subdivision control law and was not altered zoning. So that was that legal opinion. So then I asked for some clarification. Here. As a quick follow-up, I asked, does a special permit run with the use of the property and a variance run with the land? It still wasn't clear to me at that time. And the answer is it depends. He just reiterated the 5 conditions of approval in that 1990 special permit to remain applicable and only be altered by a new special permit. So originally there was feedback from the applicant's team that they remained felt that the new special permit that they were issued in August of 2022 overrode the 1990 special permit. But that doesn't seem to be what town council feels. And when I spoke with the chair of the ZBA, Chair Williams, and asked him specifically during the meeting, and what was discussed, and I read the meeting minutes. He also opined that the intent was not to change those specific site restrictions on, it was based on the use that he forward with. And that was that legal opinion. And then I had sent another legal opinion request regarding the drainage easement. Is a drainage easement for offsite drainage an acceptable approach? And I believe the understanding was, yes, it was. Can an easement be created by an A&R lot and by an A&R plan, because the easement was shown as a proposed easement on the A&R design, which I don't think was super clear. I don't think we focused on that. It was more the frontage on the way. And an A&R, an easement is not lines on a plan. An easement requires the language that describes it, who is the whole, and the dominant and servient parties in that. There was also a discussion that you can't give an easement to yourself. There is some way you can do it with some kind of real estate easement, but it was a tricky kind of thing, and we didn't go into great detail on that, but. So he said, in my last question was, is it a viable approach for the planning board to require a condition for site plan approval for the drainage easement language to be provided for the detention basin utilized by the self-storage lot that is located off property to ensure that the easement language is appropriate and reported at the registry? Yes, absolutely, and that a condition should be added saying that the drainage easement language, it's written, should be provided for town council review and acceptance by the planning board prior to certificate of occupancy. And then with the condition that you record that you'll record the drainage when you convey the property. Right, so when you convey the property, the deed should reflect that there's an easement. And I just want to point out, it's not just the retention basin. I think there's path basin in that strip of parking somewhere. Right, I think about halfway up in the middle of the parking, right under where the 360. Somewhere in there is a patch basin. Or maybe-
There are in fact, Brenda, there are in fact two.
Yeah,
One here at the southeast corner.
Yeah.
One in the middle of this line of pavement,
yeah,
and there's additional to drain manhole right on the property boundary.
yeah, in that little loop that. So just note that, when you do that, easement that somehow you gotta make sure that any of that drainage is outside. That's included. Yeah. So that was it, and then the last thing we had asked him was his ability to attend this evening, and they were not available for this evening. But they could be available at the next meeting. January 9th. Town council calendar, we have that spot open. if we do.
So I have no other questions. I just read of the partial conditions and just wanted to make sure that's why that language is included.
I don't have any comments. I have a couple.
The little things, the landscape plan, the note says the hickory tree is to remain, yet the key still says it's to be removed.
Is it supposed to stay or go?
Then
Okay. And Amy, where is it on the plan? Do you know where that hickory tree is, or is it just in the tree?
There, up in this area.
Okay, in the top left corner.
Yeah.
There's a hickory tree there that's supposed to stay.
Yes.
put the note there, so that creates confusion and makes trees difficult. in my opinion. Note 18 says all tree and vegetation removal shall be coordinated with the project landscape. What tree removal? I thought trees were remaining.
Yeah, at this point, there is no freedom of it. To do that. Yeah, it's not gonna happen like that.
So we can get rid of that note?
Yeah.
Um. Now the fence stops at what was that parking space? Why doesn't it continue across and you can't access that lower lot?
Well, they, on this plan, as you see, the red line on this fence. There's the berm corner right here, you can't drive between this fence and get to that, and this is to be striped off. There's a physical stop anybody from parking right that way. And can, but the fence would stop anybody from getting to the end of this strip.
Fence, so how? So how tall's the berm? I know people drive over.
Typical 6-inch A cross-section style berm.
6 inch?
Yeah.
So that would be easy to drive.
I suppose, we're, you know. I mean, if you want us to extend the fence, we can do that. It's not a big deal. But I mean,
Well, I think access to that resi portion of that resi parking should be cut off, not stop.
it is cut off. I mean, unless somebody drives over whatever vegetation there is there and you can look at curb, you're not gonna be able to get to it. We can extend the fence. It's not a big deal.
When is this board gonna act on this site plan?
When I finish asking my question. The tree, I thank you for noting all the trees. There are some on the western side. That are there, but they aren't shown and they're over.
There are some, I don't know if those are some of the very large ones, or some on the Eagle leasing property immediately adjacent to the property line. I don't know if those are some of the ones that you received from the parking.
Oh. But they're on here.
No,
They're on
there's
this
some
side.
very large ones just over the line into the Eagle leasing side. I really debated asking, should we ask for credit for those as the buffering, you know, but they're on the party's property, so we didn't go with the last one.
So all the trees that are shown are,
Yeah, all
the
these trees,
intention is that they're there to remain,
correct.
but that's not noted on.
Well, where we've not, I mean, again, with the exception of the accidental typo, you know, number 18, we're not proposing to cut any trees. I mean, I'm not sure we have to say every tree is to remain and we're not proposing to cut it.
You'd be surprised.
Yeah.
Well, that's a simple fix, right? You just add them
Yeah,
to
because-
to remain.
Because they're there to satisfy the buffer on Route 9. And I think it should be clear that they're to remain.
We'll add a note specifically saying that there are no tree cuttings proposed.
Those are the easy things. The difficult, according to the site plan approval. In order to approve a site plan, the planning board must ensure that visual intrusion is minimized by minimizing the visibility of parking, storage, and other outdoor service areas viewed from public ways or premises residentially used or so. So my question is, if that's going to be outdoor storage and pods are 8 feet tall and boats on trailers are at least 8 feet tall, how is a 6-foot fence going to minimize the visibility of those things?
Because of the topography there. The land slopes off toward Route 9, not up from the residential zone lot. And so a 6-foot tall fence will be adequate to block any visibility of things that, anything that the applicant intends to place upon parking for storage.
So what you're saying is, if you're standing in that strip of parking, that's, say you're standing near that fence, 6-foot fence along the southern property line, right, that you're proposing? You're saying from that point south, the topography goes down.
No, looking toward the self-storage site.
So I'm standing on the lower lot, looking towards the storage. And the property goes down,
Generally, yes.
so you're.
I suppose if you were Taco Fall, the former Celtics player.
Yeah.
Who I think is 7'8", that then you would see over the fence.
Mhm.
but most people aren't 7/8.
I just want to be clear. So you're standing on the south of that fence or south, if you're standing on the southern lot, say near the detention basin somewhere, right? And you're looking north. Right? See the contours on it. You're saying the property actually goes down towards Route 9.
Generally, yes.
Generally
to-
slopes down.
You would be standing, for instance, if you're standing in detention basin on elevation 314.
Yeah,
And the property line, for instance, right here is 320 at the ground, so the fence is up at 326, and again, you're standing at 314.
oh, so you're lower at the detention
Yeah.
basin. You're
Yeah.
standing lower and the property goes
Yes.
up.
But my point though is then beyond the proposed 6-foot fence, the property begins to go back down again.
Oh, kind of like a high point and then it. So it's
Perfect.
almost like an exaggerated berm.
Yes.
in a sense. I just want to try and get a picture of that, so the planning board understands.
If you're on the other side of the detention base, you're equal with the fence.
Or maybe even lower. James has the contours.
Actually, if you were on this property, for instance, right here, you're standing at elevation again about 312. So you're again quite a bit lower than this. Again, 320 is the ground right here, fence at 326. And yeah, that's 312 right there, just standing beside the garage. So again, you're 14 feet lower than the top of that fence. I can't say that nothing can be visible beyond it, but it is, the topography is helping create some diminishing of visibility.
Any other questions on the board?
Well,
In the public? Any questions? No? Any questions on the decision?
Well, I guess I have one question. I don't remember seeing it. The fence itself, is it gonna be woven with like green?
Yeah, it's gonna be, the fence is gonna be chain link with the slats woven through to create effectively an opening on the surface viewed from outside.
Is that in the condition?
I know that it's on the plan in the top right corner, it
Alright.
says chain link fence is as a buffer screen, but we can add. we
No,
can Definitely,
it's on the plan.
Yeah. it says.
But you're right, though, it did not specify that it be with the slat to be okay for that. Again, not having a discussion all along, to have a visual barrier. So with the decision that it explicitly called that out, I think probably.
But Andy, it wasn't specific on the plan, it just said 6-foot buffering fence, screening your.
Yep.
In the.
Well, if
buffer.
we, is it easier to put it in the conditions or on the plan?
It should
Right.
probably be on the plan. You should
It should
probably
be both.
add that note on. If that's the fence that, you're proposing, it's more specific.
So the only thing I changed is L3, your P says proposed 10-foot high. So you to change that. It's marked on the other.
So did you think that, being specific on the type of fence should also be a condition in the decision, or is the plans?
I'm fine with it on the plan if it's on the plan, as long as it's down there.
It's gonna be chain link fence. Right.
There are gonna be other changes on the plan and that's easy. I don't wanna complicate it.
Too late.
But is that the fence you're going with? Are you sure about that fence,
Yes.
that type of fence?
For this, for the storage use, it's the appropriate thing. You can get prettier solid fences, but in an area that where things are just stored, people will bend things around occasionally, whatever. So more heavy duty rather than pretty.
Karina, on the decision on the procedural history, it still has restriping of the lower parking lot, but they made that.
So you're not restriping the lower parking lot.
No,
You're gonna leave the existing striping? Is there existing striping?
there is existing striping right now. If you walk, if you were out there, you'd see all the, have been it's shown on the existing conditions plan.
Right.
Divisions of those spaces.
So you don't plan on refreshing those, you're just gonna let that be the way it is,
Yes.
so you're not restriping. I have to just make sure that.
And also on 5 and under number 3, no. The lower parking lot will be restriped.
So I'll be updating that material still, that's just kind of boilerplate stuff, I can put in easy. I wanted to focus on the, conditions at first. And Brian, you were aware, everything I highlighted had a potential change in the decision. In the condition and or the findings, you know, I added the note about the A&R plan with the doors. I mean, so this history of it there. Town council opinion of the legal use on residential A, so it's clear in the future. There are 2 standard findings in the decision number 12 and 13. And in it, you know, when with prior town council, we added these statements because town council recommended it, but it says the applicant and the project representatives demonstrated on the plans and reports to the corresponding during public hearing that the proposed development is in conformance with the zoning bylaws. And the number 13 is very similar. I just wanted to make sure. The board still finds those appropriate to me. So with the final minor changes to the plans as discussed tonight, we would need to get, when you submit the 3 copies of the final plans for planning board endorsement, you have to have those changes in there, and it will probably reflect a new date, revision date, right? So I'll update the date accordingly under the decision of the vote of the board, based on the plan that you provided. The plan.
Back to my question about when the board's gonna act. The applicant has not directed the engineer to make any plan changes.
No, but if he does, this is the
He,
procedure.
he's nicely offering to, but we haven't asked him to do that yet.
Okay, but just so you know,
So those little updates and inconsistencies are not going to be changed on the plan.
I didn't say that, but I highly suspect, based on the lack of progress here, that when he makes those changes tomorrow, there will be more T crossing and I dotting that he's asked to do, which further delays Fuss and O'Neill reviewing something and further delays action by this board. I mean, the change relating to tree removal must be done in coordination with the landscape architect. That does not mean, that's not an inconsistency. That does not mean tree removal will occur. That's a protection for the board. Just if this showed any tree removal, that it will be done under supervision.
That has not been my experience.
It's it doesn't mean the tree clearing will occur. It's not intended to mean tree clearing will occur. Again, it's there for protection for the board, I think. So removing it, if anything, is not to the board's advantage and probably to the board's detriment. Because it takes away a chance at coordination if there was tree removal occurring, and as the plan shows, and as Mr. Tatro reiterated, no tree removal was proposed. So we
There's
can
other
go
things
meeting,
on-
we
There
can
are
go
other
meeting
things
after
on the
meeting.
plan To change. So in order for the planning board to endorse, once they vote, hopefully, sooner than later, there's other things that have to change, so a small change like that is not shouldn't be a big deal to say you're not gonna remove the trees, because you have to change some other things already. There's some, inconsistencies on the roads, that we just went through. So if
So
you're gonna change one small thing, you
If-
might as well fix the plan so it's accurate.
if Mr. Tatro makes these changes, will the 4 members of the board sitting here tonight vote to approve the same?
We haven't-
No, I wonder if the board would be willing to say that, given where we are and the number of changes that have been made, and each concern has been responded to, and the applicants paid for Mr. Tatro to make more changes. And we come back and we're about to pay Fuss and O'Neill again. So I want to be able to advise my client to say yes to coming back on January 9th. I really do. So can I hear from you all? Can the audience hear from you? That when he makes the changes that have been discussed tonight, that I can tell Mr. Ferris that there's gonna be action on the 9th. He can walk out of here on the 9th or the morning of the 10th and know that you're handing a signed decision to the town.
So you're asking us if we're gonna approve a plan we haven't seen yet.
It is exactly what you're looking at. And
No, but
hopefully
I
you've
mean,
had it
so-
from staff since
I mean-
Friday.
You're on the planning board yourself in your own town, right?
Yes,
I mean, so you're, I mean, granted, in my own opinion, there's not anything else that doesn't, change or there's no new inconsistency or anything. I got no other questions.
all the time at the Linfield Planning Board, which I chair. Applicants say to us, we're gonna make these changes. Do we know when we come back next month that you'll act? And we give a straw poll, yes, because we know what the applicant and their team are having to put into these changes and further delay. We talked about it with the chair and the planner last week. Mr. Ferris is having tax consequences because this will now not be approved in calendar year 2022. We talked about the lending costs, the cost of interest on the loan that he's not able to use because work hasn't proceeded. I wanted to say, let's take a little step back. No one can think that the site plan can be approved as readily as special permit was by the ZBA in August in one meeting. That was wonderful, but that was an exception, I'd say. Nothing. But really, if we take a step back, this is an existing 55,000 square foot building. That's the thrust of this use. And the thrust of the site plan is interior work where the outside of the building is not changing. The storage in the parking lot, which I know you have to condition and oversee to protect the town, is ancillary. So it really is, when you take a step back to us, I'm advocating for my client, but it is really more than anything else, an existing building. Mr. Ferris just wants to reconfigure on the inside for self-storage.
Which needs to be in compliance.
Yes, and I think we're there now. That's why, like, adjusting the fence height and all that. I think we're there. I haven't heard about any zoning non-compliance in tonight's discussion. There.
I have no other, concerns other than those sort of inconsistencies that I would like to see. Remedied.
Thank you.
I mean, I understand your point, but at the same time, from what we've experienced as a board, not from you or this applicant or other things. If we're not crystal clear, everyone's not crystal clear on what we're proving, then random things happen. And even when we are crystal clear, random things happen. We still have applicants that are coming back, or we have to go through the town enforcement officer because they've changed things without coming to us and things like that. So, and the only thing we have to go back to is the plan itself and point to it and say, here on the approved plan, this is what it said, and now you're out of compliance and we have to bring it back. So we've got, one shot at this to get it right. And that's what we're trying to do.
So, do you want to finish quickly going through the last few questions of the condition? Sure.
I want to say, by the way, we're completely on board, as we talked about in that side meeting we had last week. about the decision containing that condition about when the other lots off conveyed, there will be an easement right at that time that you all accept and town council approves.
That condition number 5, and which
Or board.
shall be provided for the drainage easement. And then, just so it's clear, easement language including but not limited to the drainage easement, if any other easements proposed after, privy to the care of at this point of that come up, shall be subject to town council review and any acceptance,
Makes
so
sense.
that the project. And again, I'm just going through the highlighted one, because we already talked about.
Can I bring up something that's important to free?
Sure.
I don't know if it goes there or not, but because we talked about a, noise bylaw, and I don't know if the noise bylaw, so Board of Health has, now a Board of Health noise pollution policy. And I don't know how that gets referenced in this document, but I wonder if it gets referenced up in 3, because it's a policy for industrial noise and a bylaw also. Bylaw, I think, comes under general laws. But the Board of Health noise pollution policy isn't exactly referenced in here. I wonder if we could just add that reference somewhere.
So I think that we talked about this at an earlier meeting, and I think there was discussion to add the term in it, and all the policies and the rules and regulations applicable there too.
Oh, okay, because I'm seeing all the rules and regs.
Yeah, it's not in there right now, but I remember that we talked about adding the word policies in there, which would cover other policies as well, so we for ADA policies or noise bylaw policies or anything else, they're still compelled to follow the town code. And those codes reference policies and regulations. So I could, just for clarification, so there's no confusion, because I know it happens, could add the word policies in all the rules and regulations and policies applicable there too.
That would be,
All right. Is that, are you on board with that? Ryan?
Yes.
Generic cover all of that, well. Okay, so number 7, I had highlighted. Just because I changed the wording a little bit, exterior building on the light which shall be controlled by an internal time clock, which can be programmed by the owner. Lighting for outdoor storage area shall have motion sensors. After 8 p.m., exterior lights will be controlled by motion sensors. And then the hours of operation further down. Means the lights off at 10. So I just wanted to make sure that's clear. Condition number 10 was added. A little bit back, existing trees on the western portion of the site and along Route 9 shall remain, just to reinforce that we run into a lot of issues with trees. Yeah. And we are a Tree City USA community now, so there's a lot of focus on it. The hours of operation, I spelled it out and clarified that the building is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, subject to hard access permitted by current customers and storage self-storage use and continuous video monitoring by the property owner or its agent property manager. The exterior storage lot, 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. only via card access at the gate to the lot. And so it's clear to everybody, at 8 p.m. motion sensors are activated to turn the lights on and off, and at 10 p.m. the lights are off. Right. And then
At 10, there wouldn't be any access other than by first responders.
Right. The planning board shall be notified when the facility will begin operating. After said notification, the planning board shall have 1 year to review noise levels. During this review period, the planning board reserves the right to require adjustment to the hours of operation of the exterior storage area to determine the impact to adjacent properties as accepted. So at the last meeting, asked similar to the lighting bylaw, to the lighting aspects where the planning board has the year to review.
I just as an update, I hadn't read, I just received, I think, at the last meeting, the Board of Health noise pollution policy. The statement that they say, I thought it might be simpler, or you can use one creative. In the Board of Health policy, it says, this is their statement. The town of South Rose noise bylaw encompasses unreasonable disturbance beyond the property line. So it is almost the same concept as the lighting bylaw that is stays on the property. And it's just a simple statement. It's not really, specific to this property, but I think if we're gonna, you know, put in a statement about, lighting bylaw and not trans, rest on the property or whatever going on in the property, I'd be interested to have a statement that sort of says almost, you know, similar sort of thing.
So, can you just
So-
say that
so it's
statement
really-
one more time?
So this is just their, I'll tell you what their statement is. The town of Southborough's noise bylaw encompasses unreasonable disturbance beyond the property line for keeping the peace. Is what it actually states.
Yeah, so my opinion on that is that, if it does become an issue, that the planning board would resource the Board of Health's policies at that time. This leaves it a little bit more open so that it's not restricted to just off-site moves or whatever. You know, I mean, it just leaves it a little bit more in the planning board's realm to source the issue.
Okay, what does that mean? Because the policy doesn't list the planning board as having any role in noise. There's actually a policy and a Board of Health guideline, and the guideline is meant for residents and, you know, commercial, non-residents to, you know, what to do if there's noise, and it's residential and non-residential for standing. And so it delineates where Board of Health has a role and where police have a role, but nowhere in their guidelines does it say that the planning board has a role. And I think maybe the building inspector too,
So we don't,
right?
except for we've reserved the right on this particular project for 1 year, just to make sure that whatever's going on in the store, outdoor stores, doesn't have a detrimental impact.
Yeah, so that actually goes farther than what, yes, and I thought that I don't remember, that is exactly what we were talking about, but I'd be interested to see if the, board would begin putting in, a statement about, noise, not going over the property line in a similar way that we put in light can't go over the property. And maybe that's above and beyond what's required here, but I'm looking for something standard. It's not necessarily, you know, for this particular, you know, this particular,
Yeah.
site plan, but all site plans beginning, because the bylaw just went into effect recently.
So in the outdoor illumination, we talk about this more detailed in obviously, Amanda, the bylaw, but in the outdoor illumination bylaw, it specifically says there shall be no light trespass.
Right.
So we don't reiterate that in the condition. We know that we can go back to that if there is an infraction or if there's turns into be a problem. So these conditions are meant, they're kind of like, some of these are very specific to the project, and this allows you to get access back, that if there is a noise concern later, the planning board then does the research or calls the applicant in and says, we have a complaint. I'm not sure, and it's just my opinion, I'm just, you have a very valid point, I'm just not sure that level of detail in a condition. Sometimes it creates problems after because it can also be construed another way and then it opens it up. Whereas if we leave it, the planning board has the right, you know, revisit this, and then whatever the policy, because the policy might change on it the next time meeting. It leaves it open.
So what happens after a year, though? So that's my only concern is that the Board of Health policy doesn't require town meeting. It follows Mass DEP, noise air quality, and then they put some guidelines around that. But what happens, you know, after a year, it's a couple of years down the road, and somebody comes and says, you know, we're having a problem. Is the planning board going to say, it's a year out? I
Not
can't
their
do
jurisdiction.
That would be under
Right.
the order.
Can't we reference the Board of Health policy directly?
That would be for anything.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't want to insert ourselves in the. I mean, I agree for 1 year. Complete review process, but then. You know, if someone, say the Board of Health wanted to then throw something to do with zoning or something. That's on our side, so. should be, I assume, Karina, if you got a call, you reference them to go to the Board of Health.
Right, all depends on what the issue is. So when that happens, then I contact the board, through the chair, and or you guys contact me, and then I take the proper channel. I initially call for enforcement. Or I will, and we discuss it and see if she's had other issues and complaints on it. And then we take the next step at that point. It's just hard to like make it too specific in it. When it goes back to a policy or a code or something. Code, you know, zoning code is one thing. But it's a valid, I understand the respect. I respect that.
I'm glad to talk about it, and I think just by adding policy in the language of parcels as long as it's covered.
Yeah, and you had mentioned that previously. I don't know why it wasn't in there, but we'll add it now, that term. Okay. Number 12, the lower parking area entrance gate shall operate as a car access system usable only by first responders, the property owner, its property manager, and customers storing items at the lower parking area. Customers are subject to the hours of operation outlined in these conditions of approval. And that, I believe, is to mean all customers. Not just customers of the lower lot or customers of the building height itself. Next thing was added, number 14, there shall be no access to Parkerville Road from the site. Which you don't have. Number 15. Sure.
Is that final language, so something that council says that that's all we need because of the other projections from the other document?
It's a condition specifically for this project on
Right.
this lot.
Right, can it be modified to say that there should be no access, you know, from, to, or through any other site onto Parkerville?
Well, no, because we're just
And
looking
you
at this
can-
site right
Kind of
here.
having it both ways. About having, saying that this one will restrict. That other lot, whereas we put the fence here to segregate this activity such that there's no question that what's being approved is only what's on this lot.
And when and if they come back for site plan approval on the southern lot, for whatever purpose, then you condition access. Think that's the- Yeah. Okay. Number 15 was just saved if anybody had any additional conditions, I'll just put that in there to remember. And that was it. Thank you. Just be aware that, planning board member Jesse Stein is absent this evening. So this is the second meeting and one's final without one. So the planning board that's present is the one that will be voting. So that team.
To that point, I'm out the night.
Yeah. Yeah.
That would only be 2 people, is that fine? Voting, if that's when the date is.
Site plan only needs three votes.
Yep.
So on the 9th, that's when you go. to that.
So just to reiterate, the fence to the end there. The note, referring to the fence at 6 feet, not 10. We remove note 18. Note that the tree shown on the plan that shall remain in the note on the landscape plan saying the hickory tree in the key. Okay, those are the.
And the fence is going to go to the,
I'm just gonna extend it to the curb line.
berm, okay.
There'll be no question.
And can I just ask clarity, like next step? So I guess for, Brian's point too, is so the next steps, they'll update the plan, resubmit. Those plans have to be sent to Fuss and O'Neill for final, okay.
Well, that's a good question because, Fuss and O'Neill. Like I said, we're waiting for the TA for the task authorization form from them tomorrow. I'm not sure if they have started the review, because often on these projects, they continue knowing that the applicant will follow up. Consult with you, but sometimes they don't. It's up to the board, if they're comfortable, with Fuss and O'Neill review, well, let's put it this way, I could send. Depending on when you get me this revision, I could send this submission number 6 to them. With outlining the items that have to be changed, and they could consider that. Or you can get me a set of plans very quickly with those revisions, and we can get it right to them to review. So it's probably best if you get me a set of plans ASAP with your changes. And you know, if you get me the PDF and the hard copy matches, I can get them the PDF.
And what's the expected turnaround from Fuss and O'Neill when we're going into the hall?
Well, the
I
whole,
think that's where Marty's going,
yeah,
to see if she could be available for the night.
yeah, I don't, I have to talk to them. I know that they straighten out and solve. Turning things out, because we're not their own. But I can talk to them tomorrow and get an estimated time.
Because I knew the conversation was the date of the 19th, but that's probably not probable. Just trying to figure out if people may get in the tax year.
No, and if there aren't major issues, I mean, I don't think that any of these issues impact. You know what I mean, or the topography or site distances or anything at this point. It's just a matter of semantics. You know, you're extending the fence there, and you know, you should just make sure that the conservation agent doesn't have an issue with your approaching. I don't think she has a problem if you staying on the paved area.
Yeah, I think what-
You know, so
But the things we've asked for tonight, don't really,
impact,
what Fuss and O'Neill's, the Fuss and O'Neill approves it. They came back to you tomorrow and said, oh yeah, everything's good.
yeah,
We just like to do tweaks,
yeah,
they could get it in.
yeah. I'd be, you know, from my perspective, you submit the plan, I make sure the changes are made the way you prescribe. They would give it a quick once over, I can say, you know, nothing else has changed, these are the 5 points. And we just start trying on them. And then we can just look at that. And if not,
Yeah, so, Chairwoman Latrell, so if that's the case, is it feasible that we could meet on the 19th and do this before the year end?
that's Monday.
Please.
And morning could be, 4.
Right, and then you have 4 versus the 9.
Yeah,
And these guys, can, you know, I understand the burden.
Thank you.
yeah, if Fuss and O'Neill does, and I can talk to them, they don't have any big issue concerns, because at this point they didn't, we had the waivers were going to be taken off, and they were fine with everything. You know, confirming that there's no light shed because of the 6-foot fence on that side. I think it's doable, I just don't wanna put my neck out there and then it doesn't happen, because I don't wanna make any promise. I think that, you know, these changes aren't, like I said, they're not like drainage calculation changes. I don't believe the fence impacts are drainage. It's above the ground.
But it's the first day of morning. Tonight.
So it doesn't have to be a Monday. I would just
You're
want to do it
100%.
Tuesday,
7 days.
yeah.
Do it Friday?
Later this week.
In the morning? Is that possible?
Can I
Because
zoom in?
it would just, I think you can.
If I can
So
zoom
March
in.
31st.
So I'm in a phone meeting.
Hold on.
If we would have. to
We'll
post
make it work.
It would just be this, it would just be this public hearing, it would just be this item. Yeah.
To
Thank you.
motion to approve. With the little treatment.
Correct.
We have the little treatment on the front.
It'll be
Yeah, we-
tomorrow.
We'd have, yeah. And then I could work with Fuss and O'Neill to make sure there's no concerns like. if we change.
Thank you,
I'll anticipate it. Give them.
of course.
And so, we could post a meeting, Friday morning. And check the meeting room schedule, there should be something like, Friday morning is not on the 16th. This Friday.
Oh, is everyone saying?
Whatever you like. I can do either. Easier for everybody.
It's easier,
Or in,
to me, it's easier in person and then some member has to do one. If you could be here, I can, it's much easier in case, you know, you can see everything.
These are 9 to 10, but I could do 10 here.
Right.
Yeah,
At 10 o'clock,
9 to
10:03.
9 to noon,
What would just do a Zoom?
a Zoom meeting. I think that's still acceptable, until March 31st.
After 10 o'clock, between 10 and noon.
Can we do 10?
So 10 a.m. Zoom only.
Definitely.
No, we didn't come in and for
Thank you.
So we don't have a room? No, this is what the personnel board 9 to noon.
But we could meet at, if there's another available at this, public safety building. Or the senior center.
So is it easy to just do it
Just
on
do-
Zoom?
Yeah, probably.
Because then public can,
Mhm.
because if we go to the public safety, we want to be able to broadcast.
Well, they have to set it up there
hours.
too. So as soon as acceptable, and like I said, you know what? The changes.
Yeah.
Not major changes. And the decision has been gone through, I'll just have to. Just finish the updates and have it ready, and you get a plan. And I'll talk about, and Colleen will post it for 10 a.m. Zoom meeting.
Again, the crux of this is that Councilman Neal's saying that what they've approved, they're
Correct. Yeah, they have an opportunity. So the last review, they had no further comments, but then these changes came. So I don't think nothing's changing backwards.
right.
It's going forward.
16, 10 o'clock.
Thank you
And
very much.
a motion?
So you need a motion.
Is there, do you have to extend?
They
Do it on
do
the 16th. You extend the,
Well,
right, you do it on the 16th.
Oh,
but if something happens,
yeah, we
Yeah.
should have an extension, in case there is a weather or something to that effect. Also, I think you were going to, anything.
Oh, yeah, I received an email from our public accessibility committee and just asked that you're made aware that we need to comply with state and federal.
No question. We got a team of architects on the whole site, especially the building.
That was the
They'll be
request.
compliant at that point.
So, you'll have to just update the public hearing date and extension to,
well,
4 days after, so.
so Brian, is it okay if we extend it, what this says to the 9th? Well, no, I'll say the next meeting is going to be January, sorry, December 16th. But in terms of extending action, just in case, we're gonna say to reach a decision by the January 13th, which is what this says. In case something happens, not totally not intending for that to happen, but if the Zoom room doesn't work or anything like that, want to be able to have that buffer is the point. And I chaired a CPC meeting where we actually couldn't get into a Zoom meeting. And, you know, just, we can't afford that to happen. So, okay. So,
Extend to the 13th.
yeah, so Make a motion that we accept the opponent's request to extend the approval period for the 250 Turnpike Road LLC to January 13th, 2023.
Second,
I have a motion and a second, any discussion? All in favor, Latrell, yes.
Mills, yes.
and yes,
Mary, yes.
With that said, make a motion that we continue the public hearing for 250 Turnpike Road, major site plan approval to December 16th at 10 a.m. via Zoom,
second,
2022.
all right. Second,
Motion and a second, any discussion? All in favor, Latrell, yes.
Mills, yes.
Houlihan, yes.
Mary, yes.
Thank you. I have a signed extension request that conforms with those dates you just approved. If I may,
You wrote them in there?
I did. I just had to change January 9 to December 16,
10 a.m.
correct? Thank you very much. We'll see you by Zoom Friday.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is a public hearing for 200 Turnpike Road.
Yes,
Right up on the board, it's a.
so the applicant's representative has requested, to continue the public hearings for major site plan approval and the special permit for lower impact development for 200 Turnpike Road to, the January 9th, 2023 planning board meeting at 7:10 p.m.
So moved.
They're all set with an extension because they put into that meeting, they're not ready. They'll have to request an extension. So, there's something.
Second,
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, Latrell, yes.
Mills, yes.
Houlihan, yes.
Mary, yes.
Okay.
Extensions. Okay, so the next item,
Was that both? Did we do both the special permit and the major site plan?
Yeah.
That's in that motion.
Mhm.
Just making sure.
Good call. Okay,
next item is a discussion on Boston Road, minor site plan approval. Sure, come on down.
I'm so scared after that. Okay.
would you like me to give a quick update?
Sure.
Okay. So, with us tonight is, Jen Martin. With an S, right?
Martin.
Martin.
No.
Okay, remember I asked you that. So, Jen. Is. Right word, is committed already to leasing 350 square feet of what was formerly retail space in the One Boston Road property, which is also known as 3 East Main Street, is the mailing. So he's provided a plan that's stamped by engineer Masar consultant. He's been this engineer. And it shows, it's kind of hard to see here, to the other on the right. But the existing building has a small area of 350 square feet in here. Like I said, which previously was retail space. So I spoke to the building commissioner. Jan first approach, described what she wanted to do there. It's a Pilates studio, but it's not a gym where people come and go at their will, it's by appointment. And then what, fitness training is category that's considered under the building. We also fit in, because this is the downtown district now, as a personal service. So we sat and we talked about this and we did some calculations for parking, and their engineer did as well. And the prior retail space required 3 spaces of parking. Jen's use requires only 2 for, I can't remember which, it wasn't the assembly, it was for, anyway, her use, personal services only required 2 spaces. So this triggers minor site plan because it's under 2,000 square feet of a change of use from retail to personal services. And since it's the downtown district, it does not require a special permit with downtown district, it's not major site. They would put it's minor, no public hearing is required. So that's kind of the overall gist of it. So they have, it appears they have the parking. So that's my update. If Jen wants to add. Very good.
Hi, I'm Jen.
Hi, Jen.
I am excited to open the studio downtown. I'm seeking approval. It's by appointment only, maximum of 3 people would be in there, and it's a few hours a day. There's parking and it's good for everybody's health. And, I think it's not disruptive, and I'd love to bring, Pilates to downtown. I think it would be nice balance to some of the other stuff that's there. And that's it. I don't know what kind of questions you have. I'm happy to answer anything you might want to know about.
Thanks for coming in this morning.
Thank you.
It's great to see you again. Not just running down the street.
Yeah.
So Jake, can you just tell me, how long have you been doing Pilates?
I have been doing Pilates since 2003, I think. So I went to school for exercise science. I got out of school, started teaching fitness classes, and kind of stayed with that through my corporate career. And as I'm, circling to the tail end of, what makes me happy, I've decided to really just focus on Pilates and offering that as my full-time job. So it has been, it's roughly 20 years of Pilates plus whatever I was teaching before that.
Great. Yeah, I'm excited to have something new downtown. I have no further questions. Thank you.
No, I was really excited. Hi, Jen.
Hi.
I was really excited to see this and for you to take it out of your home, right? And move it into public space. So it's well needed down here. And I think to diversify the district, and that's exactly what we're trying to do. So I'm totally encouraged by this and excited for you.
Yeah, great.
Hi, Jen. I'm excited too. I think it's a great space, by the way, and I'm also excited to see what's going to downtown. Thank you for coming forward with this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jen.
I'm just gonna keep crossing my fingers.
Know you. Nice to know you. Is that where the florist used to be?
Well, the florist was on the corner. It was where Ernie the barber was.
Oh,
And then it became a consignment store.
Mhm.
And
Oh.
so it's the second one in, it's not right on the end. That's where Jenny Martin's is in what used to be the florist.
Oh,
store.
all right. Oh, that's, so it's great to have anything new planned. And you can do Pilates and then go get a pizza across.
I know. Yeah, something, right? It can go to Moro's and get a muffin.
Yeah. So,
thank you for bringing this to the downtown. I don't have any questions.
So we just need a motion to approve minor site plan.
So moved.
Second,
Approve minor site plan for. let's just- Route to Rise Pilates. Studio. Located at 1 Boston Road. Also known as 3 East Main Street.
It's just, one other question. Are we the last to, or are we the only approval needed for this?
Yes,
Okay.
my understanding that is you, she has to go, Jen has to go to the building department for a sign. There
Okay.
was an existing sign there, and depending on what you put back, you still have to go there because they monitor what was put on the sign, because there's restrictions on it.
Right. But as far as we're the only thing stopping her from opening up shop next week.
Yes,
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, Latrell,
Mills, yes?
Houlihan, yeah?
Mary, yeah.
Thank you. Congratulations. I'll work the hour and a half.
Dimension, what are they gonna ask me?
It's a little different.
Yeah,
Very different.
I'm excited. It's much easier.
so just so you know, we drafted decision on this, it's a 2-page review, with the motion and the vote, and then it gets filed with the town clerk, and then you can pick up an attested copy. It's still a 20-day appeal period, I think, but, you can pick up an attested copy that owns it.
Okay,
With the 20 days.
so, okay, so somebody could come and fill it for 20 days, but they don't want.
Within 20 days, I believe that's the case. I'll have to double check.
I can research right now.
We'll figure it out and we can follow up with you tomorrow. Because,
But in the meantime, I'm free to have a business.
you are, because they voted.
Okay,
It's,
Even if there is that, then you can move forward.
yeah,
It's like for 20 days.
okay,
And there's nobody here speaking against it, so it's highly unlikely.
okay, right.
But I just want to verify that appeal is required minor site. plan. We don't do very many minor site. plans. We did a yoga studio at 118 Turnpike. About a year and a half ago.
Well, everything's appealable.
That's right. And we drafted that decision, which will actually be the boilerplate for yours. Tweak that one and get that in right away.
Okay,
Very good.
Thank
great.
you.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Happy holidays.
Yeah, you too.
The next item. on the
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
All right, take care.
Bye, Jen.
agenda.
Thank you. Oh, I would just like to say, thank you to Karina. She is a humongous help to me getting me through the process. Really.
Karina's great.
Thank you. Thanks for that.
So
It's amazing.
keep going. Thank you, Jen. You.
The next item is approval not required, 241, 245 Turnpike Road. Do you have anyone?
Yes.
Is that you? Sure.
When did you that's the endorsement? It's, against it, ready to go.
This bay is gonna go smooth.
I hope so. We work hard to. Take it to you. Would you like me to give you this update? So, Mr. David LaPointe is a surveyor.
I'm actually a registered landscape architect.
A landscape architect, that's right, I'm sorry, with Beals and Thomas, and he's here representing the applicant Park House 241 LLC. This is an A and R that is at 241 and 245 Turnpike Road, I think. You just said on top of the road. If you recall, 245 is that outside stone facade, really, that's been sitting vacant for.
Will's Restaurant,
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
so, they own both those lots and they'll be coming for a new site plan and lower impact development for a car condo project. For which they've already been in front of the zoning board of appeals for. And some variances for setback. So, before they do that, they needed to come in and get the lots joined so that as we go through site plan, they're working on one lot, so there's no confusion. I think that's what we're here for. Good. One lot. One lot. So this is in the business highway district. With a small portion at the top left corner in the residential A. They've identified, the wetlands along the north. They show the paved parking area and septic for 241. 245 is going to be demolished anyway, and they're joining lots, so. It doesn't necessarily show the septic there. So we looked at the deeds, we looked through the 8 items that are in the town code that mimicked in the instructions for the A&R. And vetted everything. There is a parking easement that exists in between the 2 lots right now. That parking easement will remain until it's distinguished, or not just extinguished. Distinguished, sorry, extinguished. There's also an access easement along the front parallel to Turnpike Road that was there for some reason. So, the purpose is to, join these lots. Yeah. So that's kind of the general. Do you want to add anything?
That pretty well covers it, I think. As Karina said, the intent is to join the lots together to combine them as one larger lot, demolish those buildings, and then the applicant's intent is to redevelop the site and build a single building on it for what Karina mentioned as car condos, basically a 2-story building with garage spaces on both floors for people to park their presumably fancy expensive cars. Yes, exactly. And so it will kind of form a little bit of a, maybe clubs, so to speak, with the members or the owners, being able to share stories and look at each other's cars and that kind of thing. It's coincidentally, there was no connection with the adjacent property, the Rad Exotics, but it's kind of an ideal spot, they think, for this type of a use, considering that being next door. But the 2 businesses aren't connected in any way.
And maybe you can
So-
explain the front.
So in this particular case, as you can see, there's going to be 2 lot lines or lot lines on 2 streets, Turnpike Road and Parkerville Road. In our case, when this lot is redeveloped, it will consider Turnpike Road as the frontage, where we do have we'll have 315, almost 316 feet of frontage on that side. Where on the Parkerville Road, I don't believe we would make still the frontage. Yeah, it's minimum 200 feet, so we wouldn't have the adequate frontage on Parkerville. So frontage is coming off of Turnpike Road. There'll be a driveway on both Turnpike Road and Parkerville, similar to the way it is now. There's one on each currently, but one driveway will be able to access the lower level, and then the other driveway is intended to access the upper level. With them, there will be a driveway that connects kind of the 2 levels that would go between, that would kind of run parallel to Turnpike Road.
And Parkerville is a scenic road and it's stated on the plan. So that if, they've been made aware that if there's any impacts to existing stone walls or trees on town right away, that they will need that, and that'll be more obvious from the site plan.
Yeah.
I think that's like all open,
So,
like all open
yeah,
right now.
but we always say that.
It'd be great if you put a stone wall in.
Yes.
Well, that driveway on Parkerville is a wide open, expansive pavement. The intent is to narrow it down to just more of a typical 24-foot wide driveway to then access into the building, into the lots, parking area. I think there is one tree maybe that's along that side. But when we looked at the plan, it actually, after Karina pointed that out, it's actually on the property as opposed to being in the right of way, so. I don't know that we're gonna be able to save it based on the plan that we have, but we've got plans for additional trees anyway.
That's another question on the stone wall. I pulled up the lot plan from the registry of deeds and they show a stone wall in the back.
Uh-huh.
And on both properties, it looks like it may be kind of disjointed or something, and they've broken up a little bit, but is that is that on? What was that, like Clifford or
That's Alfred's backyard on Clifford.
that's somebody's backyard?
Yes, exactly. That's the boundary line between the residential lots on Clifford, exactly.
Okay,
And you
but
can
it's there,
actually
but
see the symbol.
Correct.
It's tiny, but there's a stone wall, existing stone wall with a little bubble symbol along the north with the wetland.
Yep.
Shown up on that.
Yeah. that's so bad, yeah. If we need to have that, I can do it.
yeah, that's right.
Any questions, Mr.
No questions. Yeah, it'd be nice to see something going.
I put two. So one, I couldn't really understand, what is this black line that gets drawn around the whole thing?
So one of the items on the checklist is show the existing paved areas. So that's basically delineating the limit of the existing pavement that's out there.
So is that, and then the wetlands, I guess that is, but I guess I would have anticipated seeing that stuff in the legend. Because it was just hard for me to understand what I was looking at. But other than that, I have looked.
Mr. Murray? No, I have no question. Thank you.
So the frontage on the business highway is 200 feet. It shows 381. So it looks to be good.
Make a motion that the planning board endorse the approval not required A&R plan. September 12th, 2022, for the above referenced address. 241, 245 Turnpike Road, map 27, parcel 8 and 9, as requested by the applicant.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, vote yes.
Mills, yes.
Houlihan, yeah.
Miriam, yeah.
So the planning board will sign the endorsement form tonight.
Okay.
And we'll get the plan signed as well, and we'll let you know.
Okay.
They'll sign it tonight for the week.
Okay.
And then we'll let you know when.
Okay.
For the process.
Thanks for waiting.
Yeah, thanks for waiting.
No problem. Thanks a lot. And again, as mentioned by that last applicant as well, thanks to Karina for helping us get through this process smoothly, and hopefully the same will go for the site plan and other applications that we'll be back for likely at the beginning of February.
So for the site plan, just so you know, make sure you look at the trees that are needed, like straight native and everything.
Yes,
Because some applicants who go back and forth a lot,
I was trying to look at that previous plan to see what they had proposed.
so. Make sure you don't want that.
Sure. Okay, all right, great, thanks a lot.
Right, we'll be back there.
Okay, sounds good.
It'll be nice to see that, something in that site.
Yeah. I don't know how long those buildings have been vacant, but it's
20
been
years.
quite a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, 20 years probably anyway. Yeah.
Right on the Clifford,
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
the eyesore.
I know there was some complaints from some other residents about the condition of the buildings and kind of trying to secure them from vandalism and whatnot. So I think the owner's been trying to accommodate those requests and working with the building inspector on some of those things as well. So hopefully things will go along smoothly with the approvals and whatnot, and they'll get going on getting that site redeveloped. So this thing. Okay, great. Thanks a lot.
So Colleen is just running to get the Mylar and the plan. And lay them out, so we don't forget to sign them. In the interim, as she's doing that, we have the next item in there's chair. And it's the open space monitoring report for fiscal year 22. Usually plays out this way. We get the report done in June, finalized probably in the beginning of July, so we go forward, and then we have a breather and get the presentation going. So Joe Rozell is with Lucas Environmental. I believe this is their third year of open space monitoring. And we zoomed in from New Hampshire. I'd love to be in person, but it was all right at the almost.
We had a lot of accidents in New Hampshire, roads closed. I don't think you could leave, Joe.
Yeah, I don't know if that was quite that bad, but I did hear that there were a number of small fender benders and the plows were out this morning. I was surprised to see. But glad to be back before the board to present this year's edition of the Open Space Monitoring Report. I think this is actually our fourth year of presenting. And as in past years, Karina and the Open Space Preservation Commission have selected a number of subdivisions, open space areas for us to take a look at and include in the report. And this year we have 7 sites. Those including Stubtoe Lane Extension, Parmenter Meadow, that's Metcalf Lane, South Village Estates, that's Fiddleneck Lane, Rolling Acres, which is Sunrise Drive, Southborough Estates, which is Ashley Road and Davis Road, Admiral's Glen, Vickery Hills Condos, that's Admiral's Lane, Charles Court, and Glen Court, and Chestnut Meadow, which is a new one, Dairy Farm Lane. But this year's sites are all easements. There are no dedicated town-owned open space areas in this year's report. And I think, as Karina mentioned, in June, we did the inspections of all the sites that occurred on June 14th and June 22nd. What I figured I would do tonight is just, I don't want to take too much time. There's a lot of detail in the report. I'm certainly not going to get into all that detail. I'd like to give a brief introduction to each of the sites, touch on some of the encroachments that were observed. My intent was to keep it general on the encroachments as far as ones that were observed at the subdivision without necessarily defining the lots or addresses where those were observed, unless the commission would like me to do that. I could do that. I'm sorry, unless the board would like me to do that. I'm used to being before a conservation commission, so that comes out naturally. And then review the action items that we're recommending. And then at the end, just finish with an overall recommendations moving forward on future open space monitoring reports. So before I get into it, are there any questions or comments that the commission would like to let me know about? And we can proceed.
Sounds like a good plan to me. Everyone okay with that?
Yeah, that worked.
Sounds good. You may proceed.
Okay, great. So the first one of the sites we looked at was Stubtoe Lane Extension. That's Stubtoe Lane. It's a 3-lot subdivision on a cul-de-sac, approved in 1988. It's a relatively small open space, less than 3/10 of an acre at the rear of the lots. Open spaces primarily consist of forested upland. And in general, man-made alterations that were observed included some significant recent yard encroachment within the open space and several smaller areas of apparent encroachment by lawn and brush and leaf piles. Invasive species are present, but not particularly bad at this site. The encroachments that were noted include construction, filling, tree cutting, and landscaping. There was, as I noted, some fairly significant alteration and yard encroachment at several of the properties. And again, relatively minor lawn encroachment and leaf piles at several of the other properties.
Go ahead. Had you visited this site before, or is this the first time?
This was the first time for this one. Double checking if we have a previous visitation on that for, no, we don't have a previous visit at this site in the record. As far as action items, recommended action items, we recommend that the fairly significant landscaping yard expansion activity at a couple of the properties be verified and make sure that they are in fact in the open space. And there's also some potential encroachment onto some of the Mass DCR property. So those need to be verified and the extent of that encroachment verified. We also, as in the past, recommend that the property owners abutting the open space be notified of their responsibilities regarding the open space areas, and requesting that any potential encroachments or debris of yard waste be addressed as necessary. And this is going to be, again, a common recurring recommended action item. Since the open space easement is enforceable by the building inspector, that ensure that the building inspector is aware that the open space of the open space and the possible encroachments. The second site we looked at was Parmenter Meadow. That's Metcalf Lane. That's a subdivision approved in 2006, consists of 7 lots. This is the open space it's comprised of an irregularly shaped variable width open space easement, and the number of the lots totals about 1.4 acres. It's primarily forested, and it borders a wetland. Yard waste piles were observed in several locations, and that was the primary encroachment observed at this site. The open space is 13% of the total area of the subdivision. Observed alterations included dumping, tree cutting, field clearing. But again, no major encroachments of yard into the open space were noted. As far as action items, again, as I previously stated, notifying the property owners with open space easements abutting the open space easements of its presence and their responsibilities, and again notifying the building inspector that so he's aware that of the possible encroachments. The third site was South Village Estates, which is Fiddle Neck Lane. This was approved in 2000 and modified in 2005. The open space consists primarily of forested upland and is relatively free of invasive vegetation. Again, it's a variable width open space easement on 4 lots. And as far as encroachments, some of the open space has been mowed. Some construction with some wooden structures, small, sort of like jungle gym or structure, some dumping of leaf litter and some landscaping. Action items. include verifying if one of the driveways actually appears to have been constructed within the open space. So this needs to be verified whether it was permitted. Verify if mowing is permitted within the open space between a few of the lots. These are the open space access ways from the road into the open space. These are required to remain in an open and natural state for the purpose of passive pedestrian use. But these areas have been maintained as mowed lawn. It's unclear whether that is specifically allowed or not. And again, notifying the owners of the open space and the building inspector. The fourth site is Rolling Acres, and that's Sunrise Drive. This is a 5-lot subdivision. Comprises about 1.6 acres at the rear of the lots. Again, variable width. Relatively little invasive vegetation in the wooded areas, but there was some additional within some of the edges. Some significant encroachment was observed at this site. I'll give a little more detail on that in a second. The open space totals a little over 10% of the properties. And again, portions are mowed and landscaped. There were a number of encroachments into the open space at this site. One including apparent recent tree cutting, clearing, and significant fill within the open space area. And it was pretty clearly based on the location of a stone wall that it was within the open space. Also, a few other properties had some fairly significant lawn encroachment. And there's also a shed and wire fencing within the open space on one of the lots. And some are more minor issues such as yard waste piles in the open space area. Action items include determining what the open space requirements are for this easement, as the requirements were not defined in any of the documents I had reviewed. Verify the encroachment activities noted in the report are in violation of the open space requirements, since it's not apparently written what those requirements are. Notify again the property owners of the open space easements and their requirements. And again, notifying the building inspector. And in the case of some of the more significant encroachments, recommend that the board may want to meet with the property owners regarding some of those areas. Fifth site was Southborough Estates. That's Ashley Road and Davis Road, the 21 lot subdivision. Includes 3 acres of open space easements located at the rear of the subdivision. It's a little bit difficult to get access to this open space. Can come in off of one of the abutting subdivisions. But none of the open space access ways are marked in any way with any signage or any kind of indication that it's actually access to an open space area. The current state of the open space is primarily forested upland. And encroachments in general included brush piles, landscaping, and yard encroachment, again, some of which are significant. The width of the easement varies from 10 feet to 60 feet and comprises almost 11% of the total area of the site. Neither the definitive plan or the declaration of restrictive covenants or declaration of protective covenants contained any reference to the open space use requirements. Observed man-made alterations included construction, dumping, tree cutting, and landscaping. And that's primarily associated with some yard encroachment that has occurred at a number of locations. Action items for Southborough Estates. Again, clarify the status of the open space. At this site, there's a location where the open space actually intersects with a right-of-way and a utility easement where a driveway was put in through the open space. I think the status of the open space within that right-of-way is not clear. Verify the apparent significant encroachments on several of the lots. Verify if some of the chain link fencing that was observed is located within the open space. In some of the areas, it's particularly where you have like a 10-foot wide open space along a property line. If the property line is not marked well in any way, it's hard to be sure whether you're in the open space or not. In some of those locations, it appeared that the fencing did cross the open space, but that would need to be verified.
Yeah.
And again, yep.
Just a quick question on that fencing, was there any like purpose for it? Like the pictures didn't look like there was a reason for it. Do you think it was someone like putting up a property line?
It could be property line fence, but it's a chain link fence. It looked like it's a property line fence. Based on other things I was seeing, though, it looked like it was probably across the easement. So the easement extends from the property line, so that they fenced in apparently part of the easement with the fence.
Thanks.
Yep. And again, notifying the owners and the building inspector and meeting with property owners for the more significant encroachments. The sixth site was Admiral's Glen, Vickery Hills condominiums. It's an age-restricted 40-unit condo housing community off Mount Vickery Road. The open space components here are a small triangle of open space located next to a stormwater basin. And then there is a roughly 3,750 square foot area of open space that was created in association with the previous subdivision, Southborough Estates, where Admiral's Glen required a right-of-way and through an open space area easement, and then as a result, it created a new area of open space abutting Admiral's Glen and Southborough Estates. As far as man-made alterations, landscaping essentially, and this is primarily around the stormwater basin. It was unclear in the documents reviewed what was allowed within that open space. Looking back at historic aerial photos, it looks like that area has been mowed since it was constructed. But a portion of that mowing is within the open space, just not clear if that was an allowed use or not. And the last of the areas is Chestnut Meadow, which is Dairy Farm Lane. This is a 12-lot lower impact development off Chestnut Hill Road, under construction still at the time I was out there. A little over 2 acres of that open space was temporary open space comprised of lots 5 and 6. And I think it was a 3-year. Those were to be held as temporary open space for 3 years, which time has passed. Those are no longer included in the open space. The open space now consists of an easement around the perimeter of the lots, around the backside of the lots. And that's again a variable with open space easement. The observed alterations included dumping and landscaping and erosion control materials. There were a couple locations where the open space, which consists primarily of a meadow at this time, had been mowed. A path had been mowed through the meadow, and it was to allow for dumping of grass clippings within the open space. So there's a mowed path to a big pile of grass clipping dump at a couple locations within the open space easement. One of the other concerns at this particular location is the invasive species, very, very dense along the edge of the open space and the tree line. And it looks like the bittersweet is encroaching fairly significantly in a few locations into the meadow portion of the open space. There's, at the time I was there, there was construction occurring. At one location, the silt fence erosion control barrier had been buried by a soil stockpile, and no additional silt fence had been installed. Wasn't close to a wetland, and no real concern as far as any erosion getting into a wetland at that point, but it was within or right at the edge of the open space. As far as the action items for Chestnut Meadow, verify that the open space language is being included on the plans and deeds for the individual lots as required under conditions of the decision. Verify whether the required galvanized spikes, again, required under the decision, have been installed at the open space boundaries. I didn't see any of those when I was out there. It's possible they were there and just very well hidden by the tall meadowgrass vegetation. But that should be verified whether they've been installed or not. Again, ensure that the appropriate erosion controls are being installed and maintained. The invasive vegetation management is recommended, and it looks at like the conditions actually of the decision allow that for this particular subdivision with a filing with the Conservation Commission as habitat improvement. And again, notifying the property owners with open space easements of the presence of the open space and any restrictions regarding that. So that kind of goes over the individual sites. Anyone have any specific questions on any of those sites before I get into the recommendations?
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
Joe, I have a question that is probably not in your purview, but I'm just gonna ask it anyway.
Yeah.
Is this the invasive species? The bittersweet is everywhere. It's not even an open space. It's in like a lot of like right away town property. Like
Yeah.
what, what do you do about that?
It's a real tough one to get rid of. It depends on how badly if it's small stuff and it's not real dense, you can have a program of hand removal. But typically it's pretty bad, and it
Yeah.
requires herbicide treatment, generally cutting the stems and painting on herbicide. And it usually requires several years to get on top of it.
It's pervasive in this town, just driving by, it's killing all the trees, it's burning
Yeah.
up all the trees on our right of way. So it's very worrisome, because I think we're gonna have a lot of damage on our trees because
Yeah,
of it.
it will strangle trees, and I've seen it in some sites actually pulling the trees down. There was one, I think, 2 years ago, one of the sites that we looked at where there were trees being pulled down by the bittersweet. I don't remember which one it was.
Breakneck Hill, before they got the grass and swing. Someone from Mass Audubon was out there, did a walk for open space. And he deemed it the worst infestation of bittersweet he had ever seen.
Really?
Yeah,
I mean, this one is bad.
yeah, it's bad.
Is it because the soils are conducive to that plant that it's more prevalent in some communities? Or
Well,
is it
it's-
just invasive, if it gets there, it spreads?
Yeah, it's pretty prevalent in many communities. It's not just Southborough, it's pretty much anywhere you go. But it's spread, I think, some birds eat the fruit and they spread the seeds. If there's any disturbance, any kind of a sunny spot created in the forest or soil disturbance, it can easily take root, and it just really grows, quickly, and can really take over an area pretty rapidly. And once it's established, then it's seeding itself. The fruits are just dropping, from the plants, and it just perpetuates that way. So one of the other things to consider is during construction, sometimes soils are brought in, which have the seeds present. And that is the way that it spreads. Or even on a particular site, if soils are moved around on the site during construction, you can spread the seeds that way. That's why I think oftentimes we recommend a construction phase invasive species management plan on sites that have invasive species present, where you're going to be disturbing the areas where those invasive species are present.
Thank you.
So as far as overall, if I could finish up with just overall recommendations moving forward, we continue to recommend requiring sufficient permanent markers in the field to enable accurate location of the open space boundaries. The Pheno survey monuments are helpful. The concrete markers are helpful. Sometimes these get overgrown and are tough to find. So, in addition, signage might be considered also. Would it be, I think in some cases, easier for property owners to see the signage indicating that it's open space, and just reminding them that it's there and that they may have some responsibilities regarding that. Also, signage at locations that are intended to be access points would be useful. It's often very tough to get into some of these sites. The use of the site may be defined as passive recreation, walking, but if you can't get to it or don't know where the locations are that allow you to get to it, it's tough to do that. We also continue to recommend that some form of vegetation management be allowed for invasive vegetation as just discussed within the open space. We're also this year recommending that the town maybe look into updating the open space map layer on the town GIS. These are very helpful in going out and doing monitoring. However, in many locations, they're incomplete or inaccurate and not that useful and make things even more confusing. So updating that would be helpful, and it would allow a way for the townspeople to just more easily locate and be aware of the location of open space easements or parcels. And as we have recommended in the past, recommended the town prepare some type of process to address any infractions or incursions into the open space, such as a letter, form letter to the property owners. I'm not sure if the town has instituted that or not. I know we've recommended it a few times. I'm not sure if that has been considered or implemented at this point. But that pretty much finishes up my talk, and again, I'll answer any questions that I can if the board has any.
I just want to point out that we did send Open Space Preservation Commission Freddie a copy of them. We're in contact with them pretty regularly, so if we get any feedback, we'll pass that on. And then also, yeah, and then she was out of state for a while too, so it came tough. But we'll pass on and she can view this video as well. Get up to speed. And then you reference updating the open space database, and that's the deed research database that we have that was prepared up to 2015. So that's where we're trying to budget some money to update that, maybe to get Mass Audubon back on board. And I'm still working on downloading the Google Drive files from Mass Audubon. So we're halfway there.
So they're town.
Yeah, so that it's on town Google Drive and then down onto the server. That's the
So
plan.
do these reports get loaded into the database?
Not yet.
But is that
I guess we could do that.
yeah.
It has been a recommendation that the reports get included into the database, but
Okay.
Mr. Mills.
Hey, Joe, thanks, much appreciated as always, eye-opening when you do this. Quick question, I did see that a couple of pictures, it looked like there were some other people in the shots, maybe landscapers, but I'm curious if anyone questioned what you were doing or came out.
yes, I think those are generally the property owners who would come out and question what was going on. And they said, and then say, uh-oh, am I in trouble? So I said, I'm just reporting things. But yeah, on a number of sites, the property owners do come out and just ask what I'm doing and what their responsibilities are relative to the open space. So some are aware that there's open space and often cases not.
We do send out a letter to video owners who have open space on the property prior to this, so that they're aware that someone will be on the site at some point within a 2-week time frame, and that they're welcome to go out and ask if this go to front.
So, Karina, did anyone call you after Joe was on the site saying, I know I cleaning things up or anything like that?
No, I had a call from a resident, and his name escapes me.
Kevin-
Was.
Kevin Moran.
I don't know. With a question about somebody else's encroachment onto somewhere else. And I told him that eventually this would be presented. posted on the agenda. Watch for it, it's in the packet. He hasn't contacted me yet.
Yeah, so one of the other recommendations is the open space layer on the GIS map. And I know we're trying to get some money for an update on our GIS. Is this included in this? Have we thought about an open space layer on our GIS map?
Well,
There is currently. The right,
just not up to date.
That's what I mean, like, we'll be updating the whole thing if we get the money.
hopefully,
We have a meeting actually next Monday, looking at new,
Software and,
well,
New
a whole new
consultant.
system
Oh,
for
okay.
GIS and, you know, between IT and DPW, it's the whole town, just to replace it and our zoning will be definitely part of that.
perfect. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Joe. It's illuminating every time, and every time I just sit here like how shameful it is, and then it's so hard to reinforce. I feel like it's a lot of an education process.
I agree.
it isn't it almost just like, someone could do this. Part-time at least. And track it, keep corresponding, work with conservation, work with the other groups. And then it's a decent outcome, so at least we're getting things documented and creates a history of, we can look back at this information. And then take the next step.
And we make such an effort to have open space, right? And it's just how to kind of reinforce it when it passes out of our hands and into homeowners. I think there just is something.
How does the board feel about basic formula of TPD open space on the property, just outlining what their responsibility? Nothing enforced.
Well, what did we do in the past? Didn't we do something like that, but it had to go to the select board or something? Karina, didn't,
In my
I know we had talked. What I need going,
time.
we had talked before about like. Partnering with the select board and really. Addressing with the clear violations, like, hey, you gotta do something, so that's why I'm like. Struggling too, Marty, like, just how do we, should the enforcement officer be here when this report happens at the same time, so they hear it, and like, what can we do about this? I just struggle with. The next step from our role, is it our role, or is it, I think it's really the enforcement. Right?
Well, enforcement. But this, I'm thinking just a step before that, like just kind of a educational, thank you for being a steward of open space in the town of South.
Mhm.
But these are your responsibilities. Or something, just some basic feel good.
Like a
Preserving.
Educational.
Yeah.
shot across the bow.
And then speaking of the end, I know that, I think in the past, John was, trying to promulgate or promote that open space preservation commission might take on some of these roles and, if they're gonna have to go on or something like that. But they don't have much money
Yeah, no,
themselves, so it's hard for them as even volunteers to do that, but I do recall something where we wanted to work with them, and then it kind of backed off. We also don't have pre-panic. These things can be fixed with education, like long-term,
one time we saw someone have a pool in that space.
yeah. I think the building, building commissioner, plays a role in this. They also see these things.
But so a lot of it seems like there's yard waste, lawn clippings, and
Oh, shit.
Bending
flower
yeah.
pots, and I
Annex.
think, yeah, hammocks. So I think some of that could, education would help if people were more aware. And I wonder how much of that is property owners and how much of that is landscapers. Because I know we don't have a landscaper. I married one. Or I married to my landscaper, but on the three sides they all do, and they blow all the leaves from all three sides onto my property.
You.
So, you know, they don't really, the landscapers don't really care, but if the homeowners are more aware, maybe they can direct their.
Well, I know some landscapers, they charge less if they dispose of the clippings on.
Right.
On the
Right.
property.
I'm a girl's property.
If they don't have to go off site. Put it that way. So
Easier
that,
to
like,
pull the leaves and pick them up and take.
no, grass, like, we have neighbors, they don't have a place to dump their grass. They get charged extra because they have to haul them away. So I understand how that could easily be happening, or even a landscaper. You know, mow at the neighbors and then come mow at your place and then, oh. Stuff back there. And the homeowner might not even know.
Yep.
But
Right.
very possible,
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
and I could be naive too, but.
No, I'm sure.
So our
Naive.
GIS,
No,
Yeah,
if they
it's-
don't know,
Just kidding.
if the homeowners don't.
well, I don't know whether the homeowners know or not. It's possible that some may not know. And so if we're going on the town website and our GIS isn't up to date, is there an open space? You know, is there another way for them to look up on their property, to see if they have open space or? Is there another map or something that's somewhere on our website? It's in the master plan.
Right now, the deep research database is
The most,
isn't launched for public use. It's, we have it internally, and for some reason there, often some of the deeds didn't carry the open space restriction as required in the, condition for, you know, restrict the covenants that restrict open space. There are requirements to, a lot of times to, convey, when the deed, to keep that in. And those summaries, if you look at them, show where it's lacking and where it's. You know, so it's a whole process of slowly kind of grinding through it and fixing it a little bit. And every year we do a little bit more, you have better understanding. It's a whole thing. So this is very helpful because it already sets a guideline. You know, it gives a baseline. And when Andrew asked about, well, is this the first time you know, looked at this project, the form actually says date of the inspection and then prior inspection date. So some of these, we're gonna start going again
Yep.
to see where it's tracked. We have a few more new sites that still have to be put out for this fiscal year. But, you know, some of these were in construction, like Chestnut Meadow.
Yeah,
It's good
so
to
that-
send them out again.
well, Chestnut Meadow, that's still kind of under that purview, isn't it?
Yes, yep, they're
Yeah,
still.
that one.
Yeah,
We can-
So
do
that's
something
one
about
we
that.
can- Yeah, and I know, so I looked up those deeds to see if the open space was in. And there were, most of them were, and I don't think all the lots are sold there.
No.
So most of them were, but one of them. One of them doesn't, in one, they had the original deed and then they transferred it to someone in their family or something. Because it was for $1,
And they
and
didn't
that did not,
carry it.
if they didn't carry it
Oh.
through.
Because in the viewpoint software online permitting, when we sign off. We specifically say, please note the conditions, but they come in by address now, so we know lots, so I have this map over track, I can track. Can see when the building, permit, so there's a few left, but. You're right, if you look in there, you'll see comments from planning that. Pinpoints. You know, here's this, and this is required now, please note your other conditions that require it. But. Yeah, they're still under. Inspection, because at some point they want that road. So, and I know that, this the. That's like. The basis on the permits, and similar. Things they look for, the erosion controls. stockpiles and river stockpiles.
Aren't stockpiles required to be?
Yes.
Thank you.
Christmas is coming.
So would the board want me to write a letter? An educational letter for review and then.
Yeah.
Then maybe at some point I can go back and look at the past inspections and just send the board, just send a little
Yeah,
thank you letter to the open space
right, and
stewards.
we have, budget them to do some. that one's-
Yeah, I'd be supportive.
Check with Dawn, too. I think we might have done something. or not. I don't know what happened. Why it kind of failed.
You're right, we did do some kind of letter or something. I have a folder, a free reminder all the year. What is that? If we have a letter, I know we send them out to the property owners before, Joe goes out to inspect, so. I could be just confusing. We can check.
Very good. Anything else? Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Joe.
thanks, Joe.
Appreciate
Thank you,
it.
my pleasure.
Have a
Thank
good
you,
night.
Joe.
Happy holidays.
We'll be
Yeah,
in touch.
same to you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
So the next item on the agenda is MBTA community. I don't see anyone from shop. So we had, Colin and I did the action plan and then shop, we had additional comments if that was.
Correct.
What we were reviewing.
So you put the, in the Dropbox, is the action plan with, Shopsy's comments in blue. And then also today we received an email, so, Shopsy has their consultant, Sarah, and, she drafted up some potential, based on the new guideline, boundaries for a zoning district. And they're on the screen here. Did they get up in the Dropbox?
Yeah.
So they would have been put in this afternoon, whatever we've got them. Shortly after. But she kind of drafted, she originally had drafted some boundaries back when the guidelines were first coming out. But then she's updated some of these scenarios based on Shopsy's input.
Karina?
Yeah.
Does it have to be contiguous?
No, there's a certain percentage.
Because can we consider potentially that 39.7 acres that the EMC property people came in as part of that?
That was my.
Which is farther down, right? Just a little bit. It's right here, right?
Yeah. It's that Deerfoot, yeah, right between Deerfoot and Boston. Is that
Crystal
the
Pond compared to
Crystal
East
Pond,
End,
right.
yeah, it's like somewhere back here.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, and that was brought up, I think, by you. And it was kind of a very bird's eye summary meeting that Dell asked
Yeah.
Southborough people, Southborough officials and members to attend this Zoom meeting to talk about their intent to sell property in the residential zone over near Deerfoot, but not access to Deerfoot. It would be through an easement from the Dell property on the west side.
There's only 20% that needs to be right at the station, main station.
Okay.
The rest 80% can be other.
And it has to be at least 5 acre. chunks.
Okay. That would be close to 40, right? That's close to 40 acres.
Yeah.
That would be, I mean, if we can do it.
So they talked about a 40B. Like, are they only selling that residential lot? Because there are a couple other industrial. A couple other lots there. at the end of this.
So the whole industrial thing is going for sale December 15th. They're reserving the residential lot, and they wanted to talk to us about, instead of selling it as a residential acreage, would we be willing to think about it as a 40B? They would block off access to the neighborhood roads, which was Fairview and Deerfoot. And then they would grant that easement, and we were like, of course we'd be receptive to that, because that solves so many problems, being out at a light that's regulated, Crystal Pond, and you can access it, you know, south to Westboro with the rotary, or you can go north to Route 9, east or west. Just, yeah,
Perfect.
it honestly would be perfect, if they could get a buyer.
Right, so they're working with their real estate. Firm. In Boston. Come up with a marketing for a teaser. Mid-December. To get a feel for what kind of interest there is.
For the industrial. And it's very high level, so they said they wouldn't mention any easement or anything like that in that teaser, but, and then the residential was quickly coming thereafter, so
Yeah,
likely in December, right?
So I think the overlay would be easier for them than doing, or easier for anybody. There was a, well, either zoned as a MBTA community zone or no overlay.
Yeah.
That's.
Right.
So I had.
And so the stats, and now the next steps for this process are, we're just waiting. We put our recommendations in on MBTA.
We haven't gone to the state yet because the select board's gonna discuss it
Okay.
on,
Oh,
Third. and then. Hopefully get comment back to us. So we can have it. You put you at the end of January. But this is very high level. I don't think we need to send off kind of map and the back, but you know that, or. But I do have the good news that I have. Late. And we did, get the PAT. Oh, this is good news. We did PATA grant? Yes, we did. And what is that? So this was, I mean, I could read you, here's where we are at. MHP has identified through RFP process a group of pre-qualified consultants. The list includes private consultants as well as qualified staff from various regional planning agencies. Where this 175 MBTA communities are located. All consultants are fully up to speed with the requirements of the new law and the requirements for compliance. And in fact, some of them are already working with other MBTA communities toward that goal. So this is basically a short term, but it's $20,000.
congratulations.
And they'll, their consultant will get in touch with us, and I actually did see something come in, but I haven't read it yet.
So Colleen.
Those
you're
were all her
editor.
submissions, right, that you did for the grant?
Yeah, Colleen took it upon herself. Yeah, Colleen. Put
So we
something
will have
in.
some guidance in getting started.
Nice.
All that good stuff, but, you know, somebody that knows what they're doing, and what, you know, baby steps. would be Very helpful.
Wonderful.
That's good.
That is good news.
Good work.
Very
Excellent. So we have the shot, so Colleen and Mimi populated the online form for the action plan that's due at the end of January. And distributed it to ShopSafe and to the select board. And the select board said that they would respond, but I think by January 3rd. Sometime. And yeah, and then ShopSafe responded right away, so once we get select board, then you can culminate the comments and more, more filled out, more bells and whistles, action plan is sending And I think that anything like this or prior work shows that we've already been taking steps towards it. And I think I thought some of the stuff they like to see, the brainstorming and that kind of thing. And they just released that their model or some kind of, what's it called?
Yeah, it's,
Compliance model is ready. DHCD put out a link to their compliance model, which has like 3 factions to it, it's mapping and something else. I don't know. what it's called. But that's, as you move toward the, the third phase of compliance. So we're moving in the right direction.
yeah, so the mass.gov has a lot of information. It's almost, where do you start, kind of thing, so that's really where. They have maps, you can download them into your GIS, the machine file and things like that, but there's so much out there. That, will help in getting us started will be wonderful.
Yeah, someone who's done it before. Like me and Colleen did a great job getting that first draft of the action plan.
It was just checking box.
It's good. Don't undersell your. Yeah, anything you do is appreciated. Well, I know the city of Cole, did get approved for their MVP communities. They had a consultant do it, and they did it with an overlay. So that's one way to go. It's not a bad idea, and you don't change the underlying zoning.
And in experience, this grant may, let me touch on experienced consultant who can lay out the path. And then maybe we can get another grant.
It seems to be the way it is. You just described a shorter term to get you into it, but not to the end of compliance. Yeah, just compliance with everything.
So- As an action item tonight, do we need to agree with Chauncey's edits to the?
It'll probably be helpful. I
Well,
think
added.
Yeah,
they added, so Sarah Tucker, our prior business owner, who's my consultant to Chauncey, had some historical information from working on during the downtown district and that, and different things like that. So she had some history laying some of this out early on, and had developed some maps. And I think that they, Chauncey asked her to populate some of the action items to embellish the
Yeah.
history that she was exposed to.
something we wouldn't have known.
Yeah,
so-
Yeah,
Can we just go through that? Because I looked through it, it looked fine to me. Just so everybody's on the same page.
And that form, you can't judge the book by its cover, because the form only lets you print the way it prints online. So when you hit yes or no, it's really difficult to read.
and it prints out lousy,
Yeah,
you
that's
know,
what
so
we
it
get.
doesn't look as good as it,
Yeah,
doesn't-
you just- you know, I love it.
you know.
So we can think that.
I don't need my glasses.
You know, so, as you see, questions are,
Second box.
checking boxes, and then there's keywords, who add information. The Shopsy's comments are in blue, so we'll get to something really better.
Yes, it's really just.
Right now.
There was something in there.
No, you're in the Colleen and you're in the.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
Because I know there was something in the previous.
The Shopsy comment,
So, weird.
and we will do that. And just like in the movies.
I know, it's like a big,
I'm gonna just make it smaller, but we can get to blue comments. Here we go. So please list MHH meter rail stations that are located in the boundary. So it just describes it. You can where it is. Next one is, here it is. Please briefly describe other members of the core team developing the multi-family zoning system. So Shopsy included that they were trying to help or they were assisting. But they started talking about it early on.
It's just more grammar. I think someone just needs to practice for the way it's written.
Okay. The grammar, so it just needs to be, refined, to make sure there's no typos. or anything. Please briefly describe any relevant strategies, goals, objectives, and the work that has been done today. So this is true. We have a housing production plan that was updated.
The master plan.
Right. 5-year strategic spending plan for affordable and master plan. So all it's just showing that Southborough hasn't been just sitting on the sideline. They've been active doing things. That relate to some of these. Please busy describe the housing work underway. And this is relevant because Shopsy had that subcommittee that was researching South Union School to perhaps include that in the MBTA district at the time. So that committee was formed to see what the options are to reuse that building. Yeah, and Jesse Stein was on that as well as on Shopsy. New 40R or other open zoning. I'm not quite sure what that.
Well, yeah, so I think we can do either. Over the board.
Oh, what the approach of
A 40R requires its own zone. Well, it says or other overlays. Yeah.
Please briefly describe the potential district and location optional, attach any supporting docs show planning once the community has already done this. A new legend was issued, Southwood Drive with 2 potential shape districts. That's what Sarah had done initially. Please see attached. These drafts were created before the final was released. At this point, Shopsy and planning board are looking at some alternative sites. It's only 20% of the overall 50 acres. Within about half a mile. One location being discussed as long as 9 vacant commercial properties with existing infrastructure. This is a high density development. Southwood does not have city water or sewer. Well, they do have town water.
Yeah.
And there's only very limited public sewer on the framing line. So, things like that we have to tweak.
Would we call ourselves a city?
No.
Yeah, like that's just like that.
Yeah. Please briefly describe the potential district and location attaching is supporting that the chill planning work is already done. It just refers back to the lettering, mapping from the original guidelines. And what housing is more living in Korea, it doesn't cover the better than to be like small. So just, just kind of additional language to fill out an idea. Timelines. And they didn't have any changes. This is a great start, I think. Jordan, this is. Right, that's a comment to DHCD.
That's to us.
Oh, that's to us.
So
Is that it?
so maybe look at that and see if that should come early in the process. That was that kind of thing. Create a working group.
Oh, I see.
Doesn't be a lot, guys.
Yeah.
I don't think anything that they wrote their own thing.
So is everyone okay with?
Yes.
us To move forward, okay. Move on. Discussion, St. Mark's Street relocation, very long.
Just a little overview. It's been rescheduled for family, right?
Yeah, I just have so I reached out to Kathy Cook just to follow up from the September letter that we had sent. And that we haven't received a response to. And she responded that it's on her to-do list to decide how to respond, but it's not near the top. And also Karina reached out to St. Mark's to ask if they intend to submit for site plan review, and they said they do. For the parking,
Did anyone else get an email from David Perry about that?
yes. So, and I think, Debbie's been working on a new comprehensive report, which we'll discuss on the next meeting. Did you know? add anything?
No, just thanks to Marnie for helping. One of the comments I think Jesse had made last meeting was to kind of keep it within the planning board purview, and also, Marnie's been helping just to make it more concise, and I think really helped, I think, with putting different parts into context, so it's more readable. Right now, it's only a couple of pages. I just wanted to say, if anybody's watching, thank you to a number of people who have really provided some information. John Parent from Facilities gave some information had to do with flooding at the library, as well as the library trustee in sort of helping out. So even though, and providing a lot of information on reports and things that have been performed throughout the years, actually, that go back almost a decade, having to do with flooding at the library. So even the library doesn't fall under the planning board's purview. It's, the flooding at the library has been so, it's been tracked for almost 10 years. I think. And so just as town planners, we have to think about, what effect does moving an intersection have on anything in that area, any of our public assets, really. And, so we're trying to sort of sort that out and put that a little bit into perspective, and just give them the information that we have received so far. Did you want to add anything?
So is this the report that's under 4181?
Yes.
So as opposed to looking at like the plans for the road, and we're just gonna.
Well, that's a good question. So I started with an outline, it's been sort of basically it's what are the concerns with moving intersections. But the way that section reads, this is Mass General Law, Chapter 41, Section A1I. It says that the planning board has opportunity to offer a report to the select board to make such investigations, maps, and reports and recommendations in connection, with anything referred to as deemed desirable. So that's pretty broad. That's not exactly what we're doing. We're trying to keep this into a concise letter for the planning board. And, so as it turns out, and I'll just let you know that some of the information that I received was a report that the library had commissioned back in 2013 from PAIR, and that sort of assessed the drainage situation in the area, and gave them sort of short-term and long-term implementation, like short-term fix, essentially long-term plan. And then, 10 years later or so, now we have the other work that VHB has done. And whether that is helping the library, I don't really know. It doesn't seem to mesh exactly with the plan, our plan. But have to imagine it's helping, hopefully not making it worse. But it's difficult. I don't think it's making it worse. I think it's helping, but to what degree? So I think the idea is that anything that gets done there shouldn't make the situation at the library worse. And from the prior PAIR report, from what I'm seeing, and has been mentioned by others in town and members of the library board of trustees, the drainage issue may be coming from the tip of the triangle. And that's really evident on the PAIR report. That's what their thinking was 10 years ago. I don't know what the thinking is now, because there are different engineers look at it. And I'll just say one last thing is, we have our own town engineers kind of, you know, we have VHB as our consulting engineer, but because this is a project that hasn't come to the planning board, our conservation has the opportunity to look at it because it's, a private property, so it's not public, and it hasn't come to the planning board. Under conservation regulations, they get the opportunity to look at it. So that's gonna be, one of the recommendations. So, I think the plans are all out online. I'm not an engineer. I can't look, can't really understand them.
They're very difficult
Okay,
to read. I'm not an engineer either, but I've looked at a lot of sites. and those are very-
okay.
As an engineer, they're so difficult to read.
But I
So
was
it's
like,
the PDF or it's that style of state format. Plans, the state is very regimented, they have to present plans.
Yeah. Can I ask one thing? Mark is going to bring forward their major site plan approval for parking lot?
They didn't specify, but in corresponding with what quick was. He said that was made a final for the second. Okay. I can maybe ask him when the follow.
well,
Kind of continue.
well, contingent upon what happens at town meeting, because there's a land swap. With that?
Yeah.
Yeah. The next thing, discussion tree protection bylaw and tree policy. I have no new information there, so we can have a discussion on 1.9, and I will, with the board for homework, to look at the bylaw with the changes in the tree policy that, it's on the Dropbox for last meeting on the 21st. And I'll also work on moving some of the tree replacement, in the bylaw into the policy. Because I think there's a lot there that could be better handled as policy, because then we could see how things work and then changes as things go along, rather than being set in stone. So that's that for that. And anybody have anything to add? Oh, I have one more really quick thing on the GIS. I was in the meeting with Rena and Colleen and Paul, in GIS. And Old Orchard Beach has its public shade trees as a layer of the GIS. Every tree, you can click on it and it shows the street view and what kind it is, and it.
Wow.
Oh, yeah, it was, tells exactly what it is and the. Status, and I was like, I said to the guy, you had me a tree.
Wow, that's a lot of work.
Yeah, that's very cool. All right. Planners report.
All right,
May get you
First-
out of here before 10.
I'm gonna make this quick, because we can always do follow. So the annual town meeting 2023 is March 25th, Saturday, March 25th. And there were 4 warrant articles, placeholders that we have. And I can tell you for adding the downtown district to the sign bylaw, 17411D, there's a table there. We want to add it right next to the business village district, so it's the same requirements under the BB district, but we have to sit out.
The new district is in
Yeah.
there.
So Colleen already drafted a legal ad for planning board public hearings for this. And she also drafted a warrant article,
Very basic and.
but clear. Yeah, that's all we want to do, so we have to, and that's to open the public hearing for that on January 23rd, right?
Yes.
Because we're too close to January 9th now, so we've got 3.5 weeks. So that's the plan for that. Does the planning board want to do public hearings for the tree bylaw and the scenic road again, even though it's not required? because then we'll have to do the same thing, get people that started on January 23rd. Then we'll have February 6th, because the warrant, is gonna go to print on February 24th, and the select board wants to sign it February 21st. So we'll have January 23rd and February 6th to iron out any details or any changes to those two. So you don't, close to not having amendments on, as close as.
Can you give me those dates again?
So,
January, when the warrant closes.
yes, and in the Dropbox, you'll see the
Oh.
schedule.
Oh,
But,
oh, oh.
The warrant, the select board wants to sign the warrant on Tuesday, February 21st. And it goes to the printer on the 24th. So usually we have until before the 21st, before that, to get them, a few days before that to draft and get it in the warrant for them to sign. So our meetings would be open the public hearings on January 23rd. Continue to February 6th. Get something to the select board prior to February 21st, but the public hearings can still continue. All the way to the special, until the end of town meeting, but that's when we'll get them at.
So do we want to open public hearings again?
Yeah, I think we should.
Yeah.
I think we dare
Just to communicate,
and let people know,
maybe we can try to email specific people and come in and talk to them.
about their concern. Our septic system. improved.
And then that leaves Debbie's requested warrant article for the environmental controls.
Yeah, I have to be honest, I haven't done much with it since the last time we met, except for that, talking to Heather Alper for Board of Health and finding out what they have makes it pretty apparent that we don't need anything elaborate. I think I had shown some language of a very simple bylaw that Westboro has, and it's pretty much what I've discussed, that there should be no noise that, comes over the perimeter to others, how many feet over you have to decide, is it at the perimeter, or is it 200 feet from the perimeter, or something like that. I think it's worth it to pursue that bylaw. It's pretty simple. If we, I'm still looking at some others. Oh, yeah, that's the thing.
Just note, Debbie, that we have to get the ad in the paper by January 4th.
Okay.
Which is right around the corner, and there is Christmas. See, the downtown district sign is very simple, we're just adding a word, which most people shouldn't object to, because they were in that district anyway, and the sign regulations aren't changing because of it there. You just have to define it so the building commissioner, and she can point to that. But January 4th is gonna come around very quickly.
Okay, so then I would,
See what you can
can I,
get to.
wow, January 4th, so
Yeah.
before our next meeting.
Well, our next meeting is technically Friday.
Oh.
No.
And what's the January 4th deadline?
That's, we have to get legal ad into the paper.
Weeks before your public hearing on a warrant article.
Okay.
So it'll publish on, the Monday after that, which is, when is it? The 9th, right? And so we usually have to have some kind of draft ready for the public to see and to give to the select board. So there's some kind of, something.
have to run the
Okay,
night.
what would be my next steps if we don't have another meeting? I had presented something, we had, I think, one comment from somebody from the audience. I had been looking at something a little more elaborate and then found it, kind of like bookends, very simple version and a more something with instruments where we take measurements and then to weigh the two. And then after speaking to Board of Health, it seems like the simpler way is, what Westboro had passed. And I'd like to go with something like that, but slightly modified. So what would I do then for this board?
Draft.
I would recommend taking the Westboro, copying it, modify it to what you think is right,
Yeah,
and then try to figure out where you could put it in our town code.
okay.
And then that would be our recommendation for us to review.
Okay, and then, so there's no town council or anything, I have no advice from town council?
Not yet, no, eventually.
Eventually, like during during the hearings, they could help.
At the
out?
very end,
Okay.
we'll be able to put the final language in.
Yeah.
Make sure it's been consistent with the rest of the bylaw, you know, how it runs.
Okay. Okay, yeah, I can do that.
And just know that both Colleen and I have the week between Christmas and New Year's. Unfortunately, we're taking the same time off. We need to use time. I know to use time, and Colleen had already had it. We planned with me that she would have that week off.
And enjoy it.
I'm gonna try.
Definitely.
It's a crazy time, yeah.
Take a Pilates spot.
And then park your car in the car condo.
Well, I do out at that other store that selling.
Oh, the Lamborghini, take your Lamborghini.
Add exhaust.
Yes, Brad, got it.
So that schedule is posted. That warrant schedule, and that's actually the budget schedule. You'll see that in the Dropbox. It's probably on the select board's website. The treasurer has it. So in addition, Colleen has great news that, Tree City USA application for 2022 has been signed off by Kathy Cook, so it will be submitted. And, we'll have another. Right. Oh, you submitted it. Excellent. So that's a good thing.
You know, if we have signs or something that say Tree
We
City,
do.
can we think about
The
putting them?
DPW has.
Oh,
Yeah, we gave.
You're gonna put-
To put them somewhere. We also have a flag and a plaque and a yearly little wreath that goes on the flag.
oh, little late for every year?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, and then we send you stickers to update the sign, the street signs, you know, 2x3 white with green lettering. That you put, you know, the years you are, you update it with these.
So the
Put it like on
DPW
the
just,
borders of the
and we make a recommendation to DPW? I mean, I don't know,
To put the sign.
yeah, where to put the sign, like, have we thought about?
No, we haven't yet. I think we have two. We have two signs.
So where would you like the two signs? So it's someplace entry into Southborough.
Yeah.
Two place.
Definitely on 85, whether it's northbound or southbound.
Right, the town even, you know, just
Can we put them where the same signs are that say that the Little League Championship? There's one coming over the causeway.
I saw that one. yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's one coming down 32. Right, as you go into 25.
I'm sure they would give you more something. Advertising.
Well,
I mean,
Let's
Yeah.
just get two.
Yeah.
it's fine.
So we could prompt the DPW to follow through and maybe copy the select board to. So they're in the know and they
Yeah,
would
'cause
like,
this is like the third or fourth year, right?
yeah,
That'd be nice.
And the plaque's great, it's somewhere here, right? I mean,
yeah, we'll ask John Parent, where
yeah, it's like something.
we have it. Just doesn't always make it to the top of the type priority. But they're there on our windowsill. And then they're flat. Okay, then, we already discussed the Dell at EMC property disposition review meeting that we attended.
Oh, my goodness.
And that's it.
and then
Hold on, let me see if I can get it. So we have to do the meeting minutes.
So does the outdoor illumination include indoor lighting that's left on? Is that
It's hard to believe.
that's the parking.
Oh, so that's all trust.
Yeah, so we have that picture and, we're still working on the letter, the 154 Turnpike Road non-compliance. We have a draft, but it just needs to be tweaked a little bit and then we'll get that up. But I have a draft already that Colleen's there and we're just gonna refine it a little bit. And Marnie, there's a, on that, budget
Yeah,
schedule is there's a proposed budget review by advisory and select board that they scheduled on Saturday, January 21st.
of course they did.
So they were gonna contact the people who are going to be invited to attend that, so I haven't heard anything back yet. We wrote a pretty good description of those added budget items. And the treasurer thought that maybe that would answer all their questions already. So we'll see, I haven't heard anything back.
All right, I'll hold it. Do you know if it'd be a morning meeting or?
It says. Hold on. The board is convening. I don't know yet. I think they were gonna let different departments know what time frame. And it could be a Zoom meeting. Somewhere it was defined, I just don't have it right now.
No worries, I'll look for it too. I just want to block it on my calendar,
Yeah.
so I don't go for a massage or something.
You can zoom in from the massage.
Face down. with this phone.
We need to do any minutes?
Yes, we have 3 sets of minutes, October 13th, October 17th, and November 7th.
Does anyone have issues on any of them?
I did not.
Those were great minutes.
They
Make
were
a motion that we
amazing.
approve October 13th, October 17th, and November 7th meeting minutes as written.
Second,
I have a motion, a second, any discussion, all in favor, Latrell, yes,
Mills, yes.
Houlihan, yes.
Miriam. Next meeting. December
16th.
16th.
Motion to adjourn.
10 a.m.
Second,
Any discussion on the great day? All in favor, Latrell, yes.
Mills, yes.
Houlihan, yes.
Miriam. Thank you. See you Friday. We are adjourned.